Absolutely, you can borrow it. These ideas are here to be stolen and or borrowed, I guess. So yeah, by all means.
It, it looks like we've hit 11:15, so I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's session. And I would love to introduce Dominic Slauson, who does technology professional development for Chippewa Valley Technical College. And I'm really excited to see this presentation, leveraging collaborative computing to innovate your instruction. Take it away.
Alrighty, thank you very much, Thomas. Everybody can hear me okay? Yes? Thumbs up or a yes in the chat, just to let me know. Coolio. All right. So first of all, thank you everyone for choosing to take part in my session. I really appreciate that. If you have not had the chance yet, I would encourage you to go to the bit.ly link that I've provided on my slide here. Throughout most of my slideshow, this bit.ly link will be in the top right corner, so you can go and add questions throughout the session. And so I'll reference this activity that we just did. But first, let me just kind of introduce myself. So as Thomas said, my name is Dominic Slauson, technology professional developer at CVTC. I'm a Google for Education certified trainer. In this presentation, I'm going to be highlighting a lot of these activities through the use of G Suite. However, pretty much everything that I show you today is also applicable to Office 365. So just bear that in mind. A little bit about my history. Prior to my position at CVTC, which I've been in for 2 years now, I taught English as a foreign language in Hanoi, Vietnam for 5 years. And that's really where my interest in this first started. And the reason it started there was because I would teach my students in face-to-face classes, and when they left, I always felt like they wanted more. They wanted to work with me more. They wanted to practice their English. They wanted to collaborate, share ideas, and it felt like we were very limited in what we could do, really just due to a lack of understanding of how I could facilitate more collaboration when my students left our face-to-face classes. And that's where all this started. And then when I got to CVTC, it just so happened that at the same time I started here, our institution subscribed to G Suite for Education. And I started to explore ways in which we could use collaborative computing to provide new ways for students to interact and build upon each other's knowledge. And uh, fast forward 2 years later, and I see immense potential with utilizing these platforms. And hopefully, after my session today, you'll see what kind of potential I'm referring to. Now, to get things started here, I first want to define things to make sure we all have kind of a base understanding of what I'm talking about, because I know there's going to be varying skill levels here when it comes to this kind of stuff. So first of all, what do I mean by collaborative computing? Well, there's a lot that could go into this definition, but 3 main bullet points that I think are fundamental for this to work is that, number 1, all work is saved as it is created. We live in a time where we are transitioning to a point where gone are the days where our computer crashes and we lose all of our work on a document. As we move into Google Docs and Word Online, essentially our work is always being saved for us. And that is a fundamental principle of these activities that I'll be showing you. Second of all, real-time co-authoring of content is now possible. Again, gone are the days of where we have an attachment in an email or a document that says, hey, you can't edit this document right now because someone else is editing it. That's going to be a thing of the past as we start moving into these collaborative computing environments. And again, this is essential for the activities that I want to dive into. And this is the most important one of all of these, is that content can be accessed regardless of location or device. Now, this is always something that we want to be mindful of, and I'm going to be talking about some best practices towards the end of my presentation in regards to how do we facilitate these activities and ensure that our students can take part in them. But the fact is that it is increasingly the case that our students have access to some form of device, be it a smartphone, a tablet, or a laptop. And these activities can be facilitated across all of them because the platforms that we'll be talking about work across these different platforms. So I chose to focus in on G Suite and Office 365 for a couple of reasons. Well, number one, they're free. They are free for educational institutions to subscribe to. Number two, they are so ubiquitous. You find them pretty much in every office professional environment. Most academic institutions have one, if not both of them. And so it's kind of a default tool that we typically have access to, which is great because we don't need to go buy a third-party tool necessarily if we can use these tools to facilitate activities. And number three, these platforms work across multiple devices really, really well. I personally have a bias towards G Suite, but through our testing, we've found that these work great on mobile devices, on tablets. There's a lot that you can do. So a lot of versatility in how we can use them for our instruction. Okay, so that's the cloud collaboration part. How's this going to innovate our instruction? Well, I'm going to show you some examples of activities that I've developed, but three main bullet points that I would say are that highlight this the most. Number one, it's going to bring new methods of interaction to online learning. I really enjoyed Kona's keynote today. So many great takeaways, I think, from her methodologies and the ideas that she was sharing. And I share her sentiment in that discussion boards are not a bad thing. I think the discussion boards have become a bit of a dirty word in online instruction, and I don't think they're bad as long as you follow good principles like what she highlighted. But with these activities, we can also give alternatives, and we can ensure that we're not necessarily always doing discussion boards. There may be times when a more visual experience is a better way to facilitate an activity, and so that's what some of these activities can do. Second of all, we can leverage these tools so that students are creating content. And that, for me, is a huge goal of utilizing these tools and these activities is to have learner-generated content and build upon ideas and having students scaffold their knowledge off one another. And then lastly, and this ties back to what I mentioned earlier, content's accessible to learners anytime, anywhere. And even for those students who may live in rural areas, for those students who do not have good internet access, there are still ways that we can utilize these activities I'm going to show you in those circumstances. And I'll try to touch on how that would occur. But let me actually get into some of the examples to sort of demonstrate how this all works. I'm going to touch on three, and hopefully I get time to get through all of them. I'll do my best to go quickly, but give them the attention they deserve. So to start things off, the virtual gallery walk is the first one that I want to show you. And I think hopefully most of us are at least somewhat familiar with the gallery walk activity in a face-to-face context. The simple idea of that you maybe put students in groups, you give them a term or a concept, and then maybe give them some poster paper and tell them, all right, I want you to make a mind map, make an illustration, somehow provide a representation of your term or concept. Then we'll tape up the different posters around the room, and then we'll walk around and maybe use sticky notes to give comments on our peers' illustrations. That's a great activity in face-to-face context for a lot of reasons. But when we move online, it might feel cumbersome to facilitate that type of activity. And how can we do that? How can we make this engaging, interactive experience? Well, the activity that you guys did at the start of this session is already we're kind of dipping our toes into this concept. With the activity that you guys took part in at the start of the session, and actually, I'll share my screen here just so we can take a look at it really quick. So give me one moment here. We'll flip over to my other screen. So here is the intro activity that we did. And we have the instructions on slide 1. And then as we go down the slides, we can see the different contributions that people have made. And the reason that we're doing this in Google Slides is that a slide deck, normally we think of this as a tool for presentation, right? Well, another benefit of a slide deck is that each slide is kind of its own individual workspace. And I can work in this slide deck, I can do whatever I want without interfering with someone else's slide. Each person gets their own workspace. And that's kind of a cool concept. And I, as the instructor, one nice thing, if I go down to the bottom left here and I switch to the grid view, I'll click on that. Now, I, as the instructor, and I was doing this actually, I was doing this as you guys were coming in and starting the activity, I can watch all of your slides from one perspective. And I just see little cursors moving around and letters being filled in. And of course, I, as an instructor, get really jazzed watching everyone's ideas coming out. And that's for a more synchronous sort of environment. But what if we wanted to take this idea? So first of all, I think for a synchronous environment, you could do this in a face-to-face class potentially, if the students have devices. You could facilitate this type of activity. But let's get to the gallery walk and the asynchronous way of doing this, okay? Can you download this? Yes, I will give you, by the end of my presentation, I will give you access to a library of these activities. Yes, absolutely. This is a great way to spur in an active classroom for sure. Okay, so let me show you another template. And actually, you know what? Let me hop over. I've got this fake Canvas course that I've made that kind of goes through, and I'll have a link for this so you can go see it. It's a public Canvas course. I've got the 3 activities that I'm showing you today. The first page here is just some of the theory behind it. I'm gonna go to the second page because the second page is actually like a fake assignment that we could do. All right, so really quick, just to reset here, imagine a gallery walk, okay? Face-to-face context. We want students to create some kind of item based upon a concept or an idea, right? Okay, so here we go. So it says, for this assignment, you will be defining one of the concepts discussed in this unit. Your definition will consist of 2 parts. Number 1, an image that you feel is a representation of your concept. And number 2, a definition in your own words that includes a rationale for the image that you chose, okay? You'll be using Google Slides to complete this assignment. Click the link below to access the slide deck. Follow the directions given in slide 2 of the slide deck. Okay, so the students know what they have to do. Let's go ahead and click on that link, see where it takes us. All right, so this is a template slide deck that I've put together. Slide 1 kind of gives some of the theory again behind it. If I jump down to slide 2, this would be an example of some instructions that students might follow. I'm not going to read it through line for line here, but the general idea is, like we said, students are going to go claim a slide, just like you guys claimed a slide at the start of this session. They are going to type their name in to their slide, look at the concept that's on their slide, get a visual, explain it, and then there's one more part, okay? So let's jump down to slide 3 here to show you an example. So in this slide, we can see that Bruce Banner came in and he chose this slide. So essentially what Bruce did is, this was a blank text box right here. Bruce came in and typed his name in. So he claimed it, okay? The visual, what you see here with this cork board and the Post-it notes, this is actually a background that I have set to the slide itself. I created the visual in Google Drawings, and then I saved it, and then I imported it in as the background of the slide. Now, the reason I did that is because if I were to click and try to drag this Post-it note, I can't. I can't click and drag it because it's the background of the slide, and that's good. We want to keep some elements we don't want to interact with. We want to keep those nice and tidy. Okay, so Bruce puts his name in. I, as the instructor, would go in and I would have a bunch of these blank slides where I would fill in the term. Okay, so each slide is a different term. Students go in, they claim it. Okay, so Bruce needs to define activation of prior knowledge. Step 1 for Bruce will be, actually, let me go down to slide 3 just to show you what the blank slide looks like. So when Bruce came in, typed in his name, and right here it says paste image here. Okay, so then Bruce is going to go online, find an image that he feels represents activation of prior knowledge, and he's going to copy and paste that image into his slide. okay? And that's what we've done here. So Bruce chose this image from The Wizard of Oz. And then Bruce's job is to go over to this text box and give a definition in his own words, and then a rationale. Why did he choose this image? Okay. Now this is important because essentially what we're doing is we're spurring critical thinking by having the learner visualize a complex term. Activation of prior knowledge is normally not something that we would visualize, and that's what we're having students do. And so we're forcing them to think critically about it as a result. And then they have to rationalize it. So they can't just pick any old image. Okay. And so then, once all the students have put in their images and their definitions with their rationale, the final step, and this is something that was in our intro activity too, their final step is to go look at your peers and give them a little bit of feedback. And when I have them do feedback, let me go back to slide 2 here. When I have them do feedback, I try to give them some prompts that will lead to more interesting contributions. So what is it about their image or explanation that resonates with you? What questions do you still have about their image or explanation? What did their contribution teach you about the concept that you didn't already know? Okay, so we have some, try to get for more thought-provoking feedback questions for them to build upon. All right. And so the reason that I like this type of activity is that, number one, students get to be a little bit creative when it comes to finding an image that they feel represents the topic. You could, if you wanted to, for the sake of making this easy, I tried to grab images on, I had the students grab images online just for the sake of ease, but you could most certainly have students actually create an image in something like Google Drawings so that they could actually put together their own visual and bring it in. I've seen instructors do that. But then once this activity is done, students have essentially created their own study guide. And they have created a study guide with the help of their peers. You have crowdsourced the creation of the study guide. And you've done it in a creative way, in a visual way, for those visual learners who need to attach an idea to a visual. So, and since this is virtual, in some ways this is better than a face-to-face gallery walk because this artifact, this slide deck that we've created is accessible anywhere, at any time, on any device. If students want to review these things while they're at the bus stop on their phone, they can totally do that. Just fire up Canvas, click on the link, and there's the slide deck. Whereas in a traditional face-to-face session, those posters, they can't really take them home with them, right? So you can already see that there are some potential benefits with this type of activity. Okay, so that's the gallery walk. I'm going to do my best to leave questions to the end because I want to make sure I get through everything here. So hold tight. I will answer questions towards the end. So the next activity that I want to talk about is the brand quiz activity. Let me go back to my modules here in my fake Canvas course. And I'm going to go down here to the collaborative quiz. So the collaborative quiz was an idea that came about with the thought of, you may have heard of this idea before. Maybe you've even used it before, the idea that students create their own quiz. And by doing that, they have to kind of become the subject matter experts. And I thought, how could we do that in an online environment? Well, with tools like Google Forms or Microsoft Forms, it's very simple. It's a very simple tool when it comes to creating a quiz. And let me show you an example. So here is a Google form that I have created here. And it is a collaborative video quiz. I'm going to demonstrate the collaborative quiz. And I want to highlight something that's very special about it. So let me go and preview it quick. And let me get it started here. And tell you what, you guys can go ahead and type your answers in the chat if you think you know the answer. So here's question number 1 in our collaborative quiz. It says, what type of tree is this? Pine, fir, spruce? I'm not sure. If you want to venture a guess, go ahead and type it in the chat. White pine, pine, spruce. Okay. Okay, so for the sake of demonstrating this, I'm going to just click on I'm not sure, okay? Because I want to show you what happens. So I click on I'm not sure. I click next. And rather than taking me to the next question in the quiz after picking my answer, it's taking me to this supplemental learning section where now I can watch a video where my classmate explains it. I don't think I'm going to try to actually play the audio through here because that's not something I had set up beforehand. But essentially the idea is me as the instructor, I went in here and I provided a 30-second video where I explained the answer and why. Why is that the answer? Okay. So you watch that video and then I click on next, and what happens, it takes me back to the same question. And now I have a chance to change my answer. So I will say that those of you who guessed pine, you are correct. It is a pine tree. So I'll click on pine, I'll click next, and now it moves on to the next question. Okay. So first of all, with this type of branching collaborative quiz, it's actually impossible to complete the quiz without 100%, because every time you indicate an incorrect answer, it will loop you over to some supplemental learning and then bring you back to the original question. Okay, so this is a great study tool. Now, here's the thing about it. First of all, let me go back and show you. I can't really show you step by step how to build this because that would take a lot of time. But I'll just show you really quickly in Google Forms. If I go down here to the questions and the answers, you can see that for each answer, I have put in the logic of where the quiz will go based upon the answer. Okay. This is a template, by the way, that I can make available to you. So you can take this template, the logic's already built, you just plug in the questions. Okay. Now, so far, so good as far as delivering supplemental learning, right, as students have questions or have issues. But here's the special part. What if, instead of the instructor making this video, what if the students make the videos? Okay, why not students become the subject matter experts and they create the supplemental learning for their peers? Here's how this would work. Over here in Canvas, I have what is essentially part one of a two-part assignment. Okay, part one is, I'll just read part of it here. It says, for this assignment, check your inbox for 2 questions I have sent you from the content covered in units 1 through 5. Once you have reviewed both of your questions, do the following. Research the learning materials from units 1 through 5 so that you know what the answer is and why it's the answer. Okay. Then I want you to record a 30 to 60-second video in which you explain what the correct answer is and why it is correct. And the why is the really important part. Okay. And then I provide them some tutorials of how to upload to YouTube if they're not quite sure. And then once they're done, they will send the YouTube links to me. Okay. So I, as the instructor, once this assignment's over, I get a bunch of links to a bunch of YouTube videos in where my students have become the subject matter experts and provide the supplemental learning. All I have to do is take those links and pop them in to that Google form in the supplemental learning areas. And then I deploy the entire quiz to the whole class. And I say, all right, guys, knock yourselves out. You and your peers are going to work together to bridge your knowledge gaps. And they take the quiz at home, they can retake it as many times as they want, and every time they have a problem, their peers' video will be there to catch them as they fall. That's the general idea of what we're getting at with this style of quiz, okay? Now, obviously, there's a lot of working mechanisms here that you would have to be thinking about, but the general idea is that this becomes a new learning artifact that students can pull from. And not only that, you could potentially check with your students to see, hey, can I reuse your videos? And you could potentially reuse these videos so that if you have a class that has a smaller section of students, maybe grab some videos from your previous semester and toss them in there. That's another idea. One more thing I'll point out with Google Forms is that you can, if I go up to the top right here, you can add collaborators to a Google Form. What that means is you could have students work together to build their own quiz. If you were to do this, essentially you would be relinquishing some amount of control the quiz is built in exchange for I don't need to put the YouTube links in for the students. They can do that themselves. If I were to do it this way, I'd probably have students working groups, because if the whole class is working on the quiz that the whole class takes, well, then everybody knows the answers already. But that would be another way of having the students work together on the Google form. Okay. So that is the branching collaborative quiz. Okay, how are we doing here? We're at 11:40. All right. Okay, we're doing decent. The last item that I want to show you is one that I think is actually very applicable for face-to-face classes, but could be used online as well. And that is, hold on, I'm jumping around here a little bit. Virtual whiteboards. Okay, so the idea of virtual whiteboards is, somewhat simple. Google has something called Google Jamboard, and Microsoft has a Microsoft Whiteboard as well. Now, if you've heard of Google Jamboard, you might know it as this large TV-like device, this large touch screen that costs like $5,000 that you can purchase for your classroom. And it is that. However, Jamboard has an app that comes with G Suite that is completely free, and it works independently of the actual board hardware. And so essentially what it is it is a, well, virtual whiteboard. And so right now I have this whiteboard I'm showing you connected to my iPad. The reason is because the iPad version has some extra features I want to show you. So I can, just use my stylus here to start writing on the whiteboard. That's pretty simple, nothing special there. In addition to that, you can take your horrible handwriting and turn it into nicely written font like that. Oop, give it a moment. There we go. Jamboard has the ability to take your horribly drawn shapes and turn them into actual shapes. A lot of cool features with Jamboard. In addition, and I wish I could show this to you on a computer screen, but again, the tablet version has more features than the computer version does. I can actually bring in documents from my Google Drive. So let me grab my presentation that I'm showing you guys here today. And if I were to, oops, hold on one moment. Oh, of course, you're not going to behave with me while I'm doing my presentation here. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll actually demonstrate the, you can pull in documents from your Google Drive. You can also pull in websites if you wanted to. So I'm going to just grab a little snipping tool here of the LTDC website. And I know right now you can't see anything. I promise in a moment you will. Okay. In theory, you will. Okay. So essentially, and I'm having a little bit of trouble getting on the screen, but essentially what you can do is you can pull in documents from Google Drive, you can pull in screenshots from the web, and you can annotate over top of them. Okay. Now, the potential functionality of this would be that if you're in a live classroom, first of all, you can put this up on the big screen, and then you could walk around the room and annotate on your iPad, and your students are seeing that up on the screen. So you're not locked to the whiteboard at the front of the class. That's one benefit of it. The next benefit of it is that when you create one of these whiteboards, if I go up here to share, I can share it out with other people, and I can give them access to edit this whiteboard. So you can create collaborative activities with a virtual whiteboard using this type of application. And I can give you some examples here. Let me jump out to a different jam I have. So here's an example of where you've got students that are putting together this chart, and they're organizing Post-it notes that they're putting together into different categories. Again, if you're in a face-to-face class and students had devices, this would be a fantastic way to have them collaborate in the same area. You could also set it up so that each student gets their own slide up here at the top. And you can do all sorts of, different little interactives with this kind of virtual whiteboard. Now, so it's collaborative. You can do synchronous collaboration. You could do asynchronous collaboration as well. But one thing that I think is really special about utilizing an app like this is that you can take the whiteboard home with you. Okay, again, this is something that I can access on my phone, on my laptop, on my tablet, regardless of where I am. So if my instructor is using this for whiteboarding and I go home, I can pull up his whiteboard and I can see everything he did. Even if I only had view access, I can still have all of the whiteboards from all of the semester in my Google Drive ready for me to access. Okay, so that's got a lot of really cool potential with regards to giving students access to that content wherever they may be. And gosh, there's so much more I would like to show you, but I know my time is limited. I want to give you time for questions. So let me jump back to my presentation here. And I just want to highlight some best practices to keep in mind. So let's see, I'm going to go over to here. All right. So I've shown you 3 activities today. These are 3 that I find really intriguing. There's more than just these 3. But with all that being said, I want to talk about how can these activities be used effectively. So a few things to consider. First of all, consider your learning objectives first. And I think we've had multiple speakers at this point already comment on this, but technology is great. It can be engaging. It can be fun. Does it meet the learning objectives of the course? Is it going to help bridge the gap? And is it going to improve upon what already exists? That should be fundamental to whether or not we're going to utilize these types of activities, okay? That's number 1. Number 2, consider your learning context and your delivery type. If you're teaching online versus face-to-face, then these activities are going to exist in different ways. Is it going to be synchronous? Is it going to be asynchronous? These activities can be morphed. They can be altered to work in different contexts, but these are things that we want to consider as well. Number 3, assess the needs of your students. And really what I'm getting at here are 2 things. Number 1, do they have access to technology? Do they have devices that they can use? And then number 2, what's their tech skill? Are they going to be able to figure this out? One of the things that I like to do, some of these activities, for example, the intro activity, again, that you guys did, I purposefully designed that activity as best as I could to avoid pitfalls so that everyone should be able to just follow the instructions and complete the activity. That involved very explicit instructions, that involved very simplified design, that involved bit.ly links, that involved a number of things to ensure that that went off without a hitch. And so these are things that you have to be taking into consideration when you're designing these activities. Number 4, I would always facilitate a low stakes orientation before you do the real activity. So, for example, if I'm going to do the collaborative branching quiz with Google Forms, before I conduct that activity, first, I want students to know how to record a video. I want students to know what a Google form looks like. And so those are activities that I might do in week 1. In week 1, I might have students record a video in which they introduce themselves to their peers. And we do some kind of very low stakes. Low stakes means there's a little to no point value. I mean, we'll probably have a point value, but it's going to be pretty low. And that gives us the chance to iron out all the technical difficulties and see where their issues might be before I start hinging all my hopes and dreams on an activity that's going to be utilizing a lot of technology. Okay, so really important that we have those orientation activities first. And then the last thing I'll say is that review the way these activities go and iterate upon them. Odds are, the first time you do one of these activities, I would give it a fair chance. In some way, it's going to fail. I mean, hopefully not in every way. Hopefully it succeeds in some ways too, but it'll probably not go exactly as you expect, and that's fine. That's okay. It doesn't mean that the tool that you're using is bad. It just means that maybe you need to reassess, okay, where were the issues, and how might I be able to tackle this better the next time, okay? You know, integrating this kind of technology into your classroom can be tricky. It's not a simple thing, but I think that you'll find that it can immensely impact the way that students are interacting, collaborating, and building on each other's knowledge, and can really help to add some variety to the ways in which online courses deliver those activities. In regards to access to the course, the library of activities, let me just point out really quick. I'm going to share my screen again one more time here. Let me go screen, whoops. Let me go to screen number 3. Well, actually, I don't even need to do this necessarily, but the bit.ly link, the collaborative slide that you guys worked on, if you go to the very last slide in that slide deck, you will see I've provided a few links in that slide. So first of all, the first link is to have access to my presentation that I gave you guys here today. The second one is the library of activities, so you can see other activities in addition to the ones I've shown you today. And then the third one is to that Canvas course, where I provide a lot of context and some of the pedagogy behind how these activities would work. And then the actual like fake activity that you could go step by step. And look, I can see all of you getting in there. Isn't that fun? I'm just like watching you guys go to work. The instructor loves that kind of thing, right? Okay, so anyways, I hope that some of this was enlightening to you. I know it may feel like, gosh, how am I even get started with all this? Really, I just wanted to show you what's possible. And I'm happy to talk with you if you want to talk more about how to do these types of activities. Definitely reach out to me by email if you would like. And then I would encourage follow me on social media. My 2 Twitter accounts, I do essentially daily videos on how to use EdTech in the classroom. CPD Spotlight is our department's Twitter page where I share out that content, and then I also usually retweet it on my personal as well. So by all means, follow me on Twitter if you would like. And with that, I will open it up to questions. So thank you, first of all, for taking part. But questions, let's do that. Can you put the handles in the chat? Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. So that is my personal, and then that's my department. The department ones where I really those daily videos are going to be, but I usually retweet them on my personal too. I should also mention the questions that you guys posted in the collaborative slide deck. I mean, I can certainly look through those if no one has any questions in the chat right now. I will answer all of those questions after today's session. So don't lose that bit.ly link. Keep it handy. I promise I am going to answer every single question that's in there. And again, that's another benefit of asynchronous collaboration. I can give you the answers after we're all done today. You're already following me. That's great. All right, so let me just take a look then at the slide deck really quick. One question that came up in slide 6 is in regards to how do we use cool online tools in a way that respects FERPA and doesn't expose our students to data mining by big companies? Excellent question. And here's what I'll say is that, first of all, both Microsoft and Google have their For Education platform, the For Education suite. And when they deploy their For Education suite, there is new levels of new policies that they have to ensure that they are following. They do get audited by external institutions to ensure that they are following these policies appropriately. I linked the G Suite information in regards to security and privacy in my comment on slide 6, so you can take a look at that. You know, in the end, can I guarantee what Google and Microsoft are doing with your data? Well, no, I can't because I don't have that level of clearance with them. But what I would say is that as a general rule, number one, I wouldn't put sensitive information out into these sorts of collaborative environments, just period. But beyond that, I think it's just important to keep yourself informed of how these institutions handle data. So take a look at that link. That might help be beneficial to provide some information in regards to that topic. Slide 7, how can I better use automation, Microsoft Flow, Zapier to manage my classroom? That's a really interesting question. I personally, the application that I've used is called If This Then That. I don't know if anyone in here is familiar with that application, DTT. And essentially, it's a way to connect multiple applications together to have, like, when you do this in Google Sheets, it will do this in Canvas or something like that. It's kind of I would almost describe it as the poor man's programming language. And I don't mean it in a derogatory way, but it's just a very simplified way to do programming. It's a topic that I don't have a ton of experience with, but I do have one example that I might be able to share. So to keep an eye on that slide. I'll try to share the example of how I've been using if this, then that, and it might provide you some ideas for classroom management as well. Slide 8. Wondering about accessibility issues and how to address those. One thing that I'm happy to see is that a lot of these companies are putting more effort into accessibility as of late. I know that recently Google added an accessibility setting. So if you're in a slide deck, if you go to the tools menu and go down to accessibility settings, you'll see that there are new accessibility options that they just added like a month ago. And so they are investing time and effort into them. It is still an area that needs development. So I would say that you have to look at, again, you have to look at your instructional context and see whether accessibility needs are being met appropriately. And I highly encourage to do a needs assessment. Always do a needs assessment at the beginning of your course and see not only where are there knowledge gaps with the subject matter of what's being taught, but access to technology, knowledge of technology, and then see, what accessibility needs may exist. And you may find out that an activity is just not going to work. And you should always have a backup plan. That's one thing I didn't mention in my best practices. Have a backup plan because it may turn out that the super cool activity is not going to work because a student has an accessibility need. So just bear that in mind. Got a couple more minutes, so I'll just flip through a couple more slides here. Slide 9. How do we deal with it works for me but doesn't work for you because something undiagnosable is apparently broken with your sync issues? Whew, that's humble. Well, I would say that number one, it helps again to do those orientation activities to work out the kinks when it comes to technology. I would also say that if your institution has deployed these platforms, the way in which they're deployed can certainly impact how efficiently these activities will take place. For example, I know some educational institutions will actually have a G Suite license for their faculty and then a separate G Suite license for their students. And that creates all sorts of nightmares. So a little bit of coordination with your institution can help alleviate some of this. But I think those orientation activities would also help quite a bit. I'll do maybe one more and then we can wrap things up here. Yes, and hopefully the IT department supports them. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see here. This looks like another question about the FERPA topic. How do we balance the desire for institutional control and the desire to give instructors? Yeah, I mean, maintaining that balance it's tricky. And I think we're in an interesting moment in time where we are discovering so many conveniences and ways that we can connect in ways that were never before possible. And that's good. It's very good. And I don't think that innovation means doom and gloom in regards to our privacy, but it also doesn't mean that we should just recklessly adopt new technology without looking at what effects it's going to have. We have to be informed. I think it just comes down to being informed and having a firm understanding of, okay, we're getting this for free. That's great. What are we giving up? Well, we're probably giving up anonymous analytics that are being collected. Are we okay with that? That's a discussion that you need to have as an institution and decide, is that something that you're okay with? Last one, what is the workaround when internet access is not available? So in regards to G Suite, at least, you can go into offline access. I can't really show it to you right now, but if you search for editing Google Docs, editing Google Slides offline, just search that into Google, you'll find the information about that. And what I would say is that for a student who only gets internet connection once or twice a week, that can really help they can sync up when they have internet access, and then when they don't, they can work on it. And I'll leave some comments in there and maybe try to talk that through a little bit further. Okay, whew, my time is up. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I hope it was beneficial, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you, Dominic, for a fantastic presentation. Round of applause, everybody, please. Don't forget to fill out the session evaluation and the conference evaluation. Dominic did a great presentation, and we want to make sure that we get your feedback on that back to the conference committee. So thanks, everybody. Fill out your session evaluations, and thank you so much, Dominic. This was fantastic.
Thank you very much, guys.